everyone. Welcome to another episode of Lead, Love, Thrive. I'm excited to have you join us for today's conversation. And today's conversation is very unique in that my guest, who is a financial expert, is going to be sharing his wisdom with all of us to navigate this season, this global pandemic that we are all currently facing. And what you may not know is that this episode was rescheduled twice. And I was just sharing with my guests how God knows what he is doing. He knows way before we do. There is a divine rescheduling that happened so that at this moment in time, we could come to you and share some information, some resources, some knowledge, some wisdom, and some hope with you as you navigate this global pandemic crisis through the corona crisis. So I want to introduce to you my very special guest. His name is Daniel, and I want to read a little bit about his bio to you and then just welcome him on and let him share his wisdom for us today. So Daniel, my guest, was born and raised in Oklahoma, and he graduated from Oklahoma Christian University with a bachelor's degree in accounting. He is a certified fraud examiner, and he currently works as a financial analyst for a large online charter school. Daniel is also the owner of his financial consulting business called Skyward Financial, where he serves and helps people reach their financial goals. Daniel also serves in the youth ministry at his church, and he serves on the board of directors for Arise Ministries in Shiloh Camp. Daniel has been married to his beautiful wife, Raven, for almost 3 years. And together, they lead a community service ministry called Live Full. So Daniel, welcome to the show, bro.
I am so happy to be a part of your community today. That's awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to just be a part. You have such a sweet spirit and just such a humility about who you are and a heart of service. And they're going to hear all about your ministry because I will definitely want people to know what you're doing there. But Daniel, you have come on this show in this moment of time for such a time as this, where there is so much financial unrest due to this global pandemic that has been facing our people are dying by the tens of thousands because of this virus that we are seeing in our country. And we have millions of people who are losing their jobs. People are losing hope. Their hearts are growing weary. They're not able to provide for their families. And so I really wanted someone who's not just financially minded and who can give us financial wisdom, but give us spiritual wisdom. And I trust your wisdom, your insight, the man of God that you are for this time. And I was reading a quote the other day by Zig Ziglar, and the quote was, "Expect the best, prepare for the worst, and maximize on what comes." And I just thought that would be a great way to kick off our conversation today about, in this season of this global pandemic of millions of people unemployed and probably many more going to lose their jobs, unfortunately, in businesses, entrepreneurs, all of these things that are catastrophic to people financially in their livelihoods. How can people still expect the best, prepare for the worst, and maximize on what comes? I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think expecting the best, I think that just comes from trusting in God. I think the best comes from God,
Yes.
So that's the easy one right there. You know what? Just like, the best comes from God, not necessarily what you're doing or what someone else is doing. That definitely comes from God. So it's like posturing yourself at the feet of Jesus and allowing him, to dictate the outcome, and all we have to do as people is be okay with that outcome.
That's so true, because we can't control that, but we know who controls our future. The word of God tells us that he causes all things to work together for the good of those who love him are called according to his purpose. And so we can rest in that. And that's our expectation. Yeah.
Absolutely. One of my mentors told me, just control what you can control. And that line has been like the saving grace of my life for like the last 2 years, as far as like, I can't control that. And I can't control how that makes me feel. I can't control how I react to that. It's like putting your energy, your thought process in the things that you can control, not the things that you can't, so.
Amen to that. And so with that, continuing with that thought, controlling what you can control. So how can people prepare for the worst in this season, financially, specifically?
I'll say for me, and it's one thing that I do that I practice as well is when I'm planning like my budget for my family out at the end of the year. I plan for the next year. At the end of the year, I make a worst case scenario budget as well. So what that entails is if we're both lose our jobs, so like what does that look like? Or if one of us lose our job, what does that look like?
Yeah.
So what that does is it allows me to already have a plan in play as far as like all the expenses that needs to be cut immediately.
Right. Right.
So I definitely say that's one that has definitely served me well. I kind of practice that with some of my clients that I have as well, as far as making a worst case scenario budget, because life happens. Mm-hmm. When life happens, it's generally things that is outside of our control. Well, if it's a job loss or a sickness where we can't work, sometimes it could be a baby for someone, so that, that changes things as well. So it's just making those, really planning for worst case scenarios in a way, not that you want those things to happen, but it's really just, accepting the fact that, okay, life does happen.
That's right.
How can I be as best I can prepared for it? Because you'll never be 1000% prepared for it, but best prepared for it. So it's definitely, I'll say one, just making worst case scenarios from a planning and a budget process as well that you do for your family.
Absolutely. So if I'm someone who's listening and I'm like, okay, Daniel, that's great, but I've never done a budget, so what steps would you encourage them to take even right now? Maybe they're like, I haven't even thought about a worst case scenario budget, but listen, okay, with what I have now, if I were to think worst case scenario, what do I need to do? What would be a great way to do that?
Just put everything on paper, or if it's any dollars that you got coming in, as well as every expense, that you cut. That is the skeleton of a budget. Okay, what's coming in, what's been going out.
Yeah.
So I'll say just list everything, just start there. And I'll say go back 3 months, because 3 months you kind of get a pattern.
Okay.
The entire year's quarter worth of expenses, because some expenses are quarterly.
Yeah.
So I'll say just look back 3 months into your budget, or if it's your bank statements, credit card statements, whatever the case may be, just look back 3 months and just list everything, whether it's in a spreadsheet or, physical paper, list those things out so you can see and start there. And you can really start to say, okay, how much money do I really got?
Right.
Where's my money really going? Because before you figure out where your money is going to go in the future, you have to figure out where it's been going in the past.
That's true.
Patterns, to the direction of your dollars and things like that. So
absolutely.
Then you would just come to a place where your past, after time is going to align with your future because they're going in the same direction.
Yes, I love that. And one of the things I'm thinking about is, okay, if this is worst case scenario, what do I need? I don't think most Americans know exactly what they need to survive, right? Mm-hmm. Basic needs, food, shelter, right? And maybe clothing, if you will. But it's like looking at, okay, where are some of these expenses that I can cut back on? Can I cut off? Well, I think most people probably don't want to cut off their internet and all that right now. You know what I mean? That this is, especially if you need it for work. But yeah, just looking at that. So 3 months at a time, and then really looking at what's some excess that I can cut, right? And what do I really need to live off of as some basic first steps.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. So I believe there are opportunities in crisis. Right. So we can always learn, we can always grow. There's creativity, innovation. I think even a lot of businesses are finding new ways of doing things and maybe even coming out better. And so what opportunities do we have as people to maximize what is going on right now in our world with our finances?
Yeah, I'll say in order to maximize with your finances, that's really a tricky question, because the world as a whole it's kind of at a standstill.
Yeah.
Right now, it's not happening. Like, for example, even if you just want to go to the mall and buy shoes, like you can't do that.
Yeah. Right.
So I'll say, as far as maximizing right now, I think it's a good opportunity for a lot of people to save, especially if they're still able to work. Some people, I know a lot of people have gotten laid off over the weeks. I know there's some people that are still able to work. But I'll say it's an opportunity for you to cut expenses more than anything, as far as like things you were doing, previously, just because you had the ability to do it, because places were open. You can go to the movie theater and do things like that. But I say because it's a season where the world is at a standstill for the most part. And also it's a good season where you can save more. But also I think in that time you're able to save more, you're also able to spend more time with family, more quality time with family, just able to just kind of focus on the things that really matter.
Absolutely. I love that you shared that, and even educating your children too on what really is important in life. God wants us to be good stewards of our resources, but he does not want us loving, and that's really what you're saying. Like we can't be so obsessed, and the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Right.
Yeah.
So let's focus on the right things. I love that.
I think in a season like this, it highlights that as far as, man, like, I can't work, or, I can't go do this, I can't do that, I can't go buy these shoes to show off, whatever the case may be, whatever people are spending their money on. It definitely eliminates that. So it's really, I think it's a unique season in a way, depending on how you look at it. It's a great season for you to just really recognize and truly realize what matters most. In life. And I think that's people. One of the things that I've learned a couple of years ago is putting people over paper.
I love that. Yeah.
It includes money, it does. So I think that's a real unique thing about it. And I think in a society where I don't think family is as valued, as it should be, or relationships amongst people, amongst your neighbors, that community, I think it's a good season for that to be highlighted right now. So.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes depending on how you grew up and the mindset that you have toward money and finances, right? A lot of times these seasons actually, we're seeing it in the grocery stores. There's a scarcity mindset. Right? There's not going to be enough. And so I need to grab all and keep for me. And we tend to not think about what other people need. And so you see a lot of the media, social media really pleading with people. They're like, hey, there's enough for all of us if you would just take what you need and not hoard all of these things. So I even think, as you were talking about focusing on family and all, and I was thinking about, wow. And for those of us who do have enough resources right now, right? If you have that mindset of I have abundance, I have more than I need, capitalizing on that and maximizing that and saying, who can I give to? And like, that's what you live, Daniel, like living to serve and pour out. And it doesn't have to necessarily always be finances, but, just serving and giving to others in this time when there's a tendency to be scarce. There's not enough. I'm going to hoard. I'm going to keep for me, myself, and I. And the ego wants to start driving because we get into survival mode, right? We get into, fight or flight. It's like, hey, I'm fighting for me. I can't worry about you. You can't get this toilet paper.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if you wanted to share any thoughts on that.
Yeah, and I have some thoughts, and I think that the fight or flight, the mentality, I think that's very humane, that's natural, and like, even for me, like I had some temptations to get extra toilet paper just I feel like, man, I don't know if I'm ever getting it in a month,
Right.
Yeah. But I think all of that is based out of fear of the unknown, which no one knows what it's, how all this going to play out.
Right.
What's the end date on this?
Yes.
So I think part of that fear is really just having faith in God that no matter what happens, I trust God that God will provide for me. And I was even thinking while I was at the grocery store buying groceries, like, man, like I don't need that, but will I need that in a couple of weeks? Probably. But like, you know what? There's maybe someone else that need it right now. I was thinking like, man, like if push come to shove where we were out on something, me and my wife and I, like, how will we do? How will we make it through? And I'm like, man, we have some amazing people in our life that I know for a fact that they will be able to serve us, and push stuff. So I put my faith in there, which God has provided those people, in our life, not necessarily me hoarding right now, if that makes sense.
Right.
Like, worst scenario happened, if there was a purge or something, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Just really having faith that, a grocery store is not going to provide for me. God is going to provide for me.
Come on, Daniel.
He uses a grocery store as an avenue sometimes. But God is not limited to a grocery store. He's not limited to Walmart. He's not limited to Crest. So it's really just putting all faith in God, and not putting some faith in God and leaving the door cracked or the window open. It's putting all faith in God and just knowing He's going to provide during a time like this.
That's right. That's who He is. He's our provider. And
Absolutely.
Even when you look at scripture, when the Israelites were being led out of Egypt, and they didn't have ovens and stove, the Lord fed them manna daily. Now they could complain and say, oh, we tired of eating this. But at the end of the day, and sometimes it can be like, I'm tired of eating this canned tuna. I'm tired of eating this peanut butter and jelly. But at the end of the day, He's still providing your daily bread.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that perspective, sometimes we think that provision has to mean a 10-course meal, a buffet, all of the varieties. Like, no, I'm going to sustain you. You may not always, like maybe the provision or the way, you're tired, you're complaining about the manna, you're complaining about the quail or whatever, but the reality is having the right perspective. And I love, Daniel, your mindset. And I think that's what we're talking about, a faith perspective, right? And a mindset of other people that's considerate of others at this time, that as I'm walking through the grocery store, do I really need that? I see these shelves are bare. Can I do without this? And that other person, you may never know who they are. You may never meet them. And it could be the very thing that they need. But you just walking into that, I think, is so powerful to share, because in these times we can get into default me survival mode rather than thinking God is my provider. And I need to also, as the Word of God tells us, to consider the needs of others above ourselves. Right. So we're not here to starve ourselves per se, but do I need a whole cart of whatever? So I love that you shared that. So when it comes to this whole season as well, what are some things that you think we need to be doing to not just survive through this, but to really thrive? And you can hit that however you want.
I'll say the first things first is, which I know I'm speaking of, not necessarily a lot about finances, but more so about God. Because
come on,
we're exclusive with one another. And I think finances start with God.
That's right. Come on, Daniel,
so
speak.
That's the foundation of a lot of my beliefs and teachings and things like that. So I'll say the first one is just don't lose track of who God is.
Come on.
God is bigger than the corona.
Yes.
And I'll say also just acknowledge the crisis. Take note of how it has affected you, your family, your community, but also say find creative ways to serve people. Kind of go back to God as far as like, Jesus, the main reason He came to earth is to serve people, not to be served, but to serve people. So I think this is a unique time to serve people. Or if you at the grocery store and you see a roll of toilet tissue, like, man, I don't need that, but I know someone who does. Let me get it for them. I could just, drop it at their doorstep so we can still keep that 6 feet between us, So
I love that.
To find creative ways to serve people during this time, whether it's, grocery store runs, whatever the case may be, walking their dog, just find creative ways to serve people during that time, because even Jesus served people in a crisis.
Yes.
I'll say we have to do the same. So, and I also say it's something that this season here, like I was saying earlier, it's unique because it's going to take the world, the whole world is affected by this. So it's going to take the world to get through it, So I think we can find a sense of community, not just with people at a church, but people, in our neighborhood, people that, maybe kids, they go to school together. So there's a different type of community that can rise up, in such a time like this, because we're all going through the same thing. It's not limited to just Oklahoma City or Oklahoma or the USA.
Right.
It's in China, it's in Italy. So I think it's a unique opportunity for the world to rise up together.
Yes.
So I see that's a real unique thing about the season that we're in now. So it's just really acknowledging that. And I think in that, when we acknowledge that, servitude as well as the love for people can be birthed, out of that, because there's just been so much division, not just, over recent years, but just over the history of mankind, there's been division of some sort, so I think this is a unique opportunity where we can eliminate at least some of that division, for sure, just from serving people, loving people, knowing that, okay, you're no different than I am, we can be affected by the same things,
Yes. What I hear you saying is a way we can not just survive through this and thrive is as a community. Yeah. You're saying we are going to thrive if we learn how to serve one another. And that is such a biblical, spiritual principle, right? give and it will come back to you, right?
Absolutely,
and that's kind of what you're saying. And
absolutely.
Being others minded, being cognizant of what do you need? How can I serve you? And I know you live that. And I know that's not always easy to do in times like this when you want to get into self-protection and self-preservation mode, but I love your perspective on how are we going to thrive? We're going to do it together as a community, building one another up, serving one another, seeing what you need. And it's interesting because I was out on my street yesterday and it looked like a ghost town. Like people aren't even outside, but then I was talking with my sister on Zoom last night and a couple other family members. And she was saying that their community has really found some creative ways to show that we're in this together. And so they're sending an email out about, hey, we're going to have drinks on the lawn at 6:00. Everyone get your favorite drink and sit on your lawn and we're going to yell across at each other. Somebody got karaoke outside and they're singing to the new,
really cool.
Just doing some fun things to say, you know what, we need each other to get through this. We really do. And I think what I also hear you saying, maybe you didn't say it explicitly, but I hear what's implied is that it is a mindset, right? That drives what we do. When I can be others minded, when I can be generous, when I have a heart of service, that it's not all about me. There are other people around me who are in greater need. It's about an attitude of gratitude of what I have. All these things, they're more internal things that help us thrive, right? Than the financial resources,
Absolutely. For sure.
Did you have any other thoughts on ways that we could thrive through this and not just survive?
I'll say, definitely, serving people. I'll say, when I say that, there's going to be times where it's just going to be challenging. Like when I was at the grocery store, I'm having that thought, like, man, like, do I need this? Like,
all right, talk about it.
In my mind, so you're going to have that, and knowing that when you have that, that's natural because
Daniel.
It's natural for us to be selfish, to get into survival mode, not serve mode, but survival mode.
True. Come on.
So I was really just slow your mind down a little bit and just really focus on others. And when I went to a camp growing up as a kid, there was a thing called I'm third. And what that meant is God first, others second, I'm third. So it's really having that I'm third mentality where it's not a one-time fix as far as like, oh, I did it one day, I'm good. Be intentional on putting, God first and others second before yourself. So it's just really waking up, having an I'm third mentality, even thinking about, for example, you just faced with a situation right then and there, just slow your mind down enough where you can process, man, God first, others second, I'm third. Sometimes I even have to say it in my mind about 5 times, like, okay, all right. Third, and things like that. So just really having that I'm third, mentality for sure.
I see a T-shirt design in my future. I'm third. Oh my goodness. I love that. Thank you for sharing that perspective. It's so good because our behaviors are established by our beliefs. And so if we really can get in that practice and that mindset, and then our behaviors and our actions are going to flow and fall from that, flow out of that. So, man, that was so good. Okay, so down to the nitty gritty, nuts and bolts, practical things. So what are some best practices for saving and spending during this season?
I'll say definitely evaluate your expenses. So, listing everything. Look at ways to cut expenses.
Yes, come on.
That's something I've been doing, with me and my wife, as well, even though we're both still able to work, it's still the unknown. It kind of goes back to that worst case scenario thing that we were talking about. So if it's a refinance, like I know some friends who they just refinanced their home, they're able to save $200 a month.
Wow.
Just by doing that alone. So over time, that's, thousands of dollars that they save. So they took advantage of the season as far as the interest rates that they got recently cut and things like that. So they use that to their advantage and refinance their homes. They're only been in their home a year. So that's one practical thing where if there's some homeowners out there, take advantage of the mortgage rates that are out there right now. It can save you some dollars. Also, I'll take, which not only in the crisis, you should do this, but I think it's good to look at least twice a year, is insurance. Whether it's car insurance, homeowners insurance, take a look at that, get quotes from other people just to see that you're still getting the best rate.
Yes.
So that could be an avenue that can save you tons of money over time too as well, and help decrease that monthly expense, because it's one of those things that you have to have it, So So the goal will be to have it as cheap as possible. We still get the coverage that you need that's going to help you and your family win and be successful if you ever have to cash in on any of that type of, insurance. But also say another one would be to cut back on fund money, because a lot of the fun things that people do, including myself, a lot of those things are closed now.
True. It's very true.
So it's like, what are you gonna do with those money? So I'll say you can either use that money to, to save it, to serve it, to other organizations that are serving, people during this time, it's gotten laid off, whatever. So you can use it, that way. So I'll say cut back on your fund money, if you can, if you have fund money, in your budget, that's a good one. And a real applicable one that you can just cut back on, right away as well. But also, again, another opportunity to serve people with it. Where if it's in your budget, but you're like, no, there's no way I can use it all right now unless I just, go crazy on online stuff.
Right. Very true.
So I'll say so. So that's another one. Also, I would say another one will be, this again is taking advantage of rates and things like that. If anyone has like any type of credit card debt, look at ways to consolidate that debt, because if you have, credit cards due on so many different credit cards and, you're not working, things are still due, so there's interest, involved with that. So at least if you consolidate that into one card or to one personal, whatever you choose, you can save money by doing that too, as well at such a time where, rates are lower. And then there's, especially with credit card, there's, different options where people, they do a credit card consolidation. There's a 0 APR on it, for 12 months, 18 months, sometimes 22 or 24. So there's different things like that. There's a lot of programs where a lot of banks are offering, not necessarily just for this time, but they've been offering, but definitely now it's a great time to really take advantage of that, for sure, because it's going to save you more money. It's going to free up more dollars, as far as from a monthly standpoint, to help dollars to pay for the essentials that you need as a family.
Absolutely. Now, for people who are spending a lot of money on those were all awesome. And I loved how before I even jump into my thought is you could save it or you could serve it. I love that. And like you have all these like cool ways of communicating financial principles. So I love that. And you just really hear your servant's heart come out. So what would one of the things that popped in my mind, I know a lot of Americans like myself and my husband, we have student loan debt from our educational careers, if you will.
Right.
So what do you recommend for that? I know some folks are like, I'm going to put this stuff in forbearance because I don't know, I can save myself hundreds of dollars right now. I can defer it. I can do interest only. What are your thoughts, your professional recommendations when it comes to student loans in this season when we are wanting to hold on to as much as possible?
Yeah, I'll say with student loans, it's one of those weird ones where if you defer it over time, you're just going to end up just paying more money.
Right. Very true. This is true.
I don't know how many times, I have people, come with their student loan. Man, I've been paying this, it's been in deferred, but now I'm paying like triple the amount that it was. So I'll say with student loans, I'll say just if you're able to do it, I'll say just pay the normal amount. Don't try to pay less than. I'll say because over time you're going to pay twice, if not triple that, by not paying anything. Or there's some people like, man, I'm not going to pay my student loans. Well, if you're not going to pay it today, they still going to want their money.
That's right. Right.
That's the reality of student loans, unfortunately. And me and my wife, we both have student loans, so we still we decide that's just going to be one that we're just going to pay what we've been paying on that. Even though it's going to not free up dollars now, but it's going to free up dollars on the end, a lot sooner, as opposed to if we didn't pay or paid less than or paid the income base. It's just going to prolong those payments, where even though it may serve us best now, but in the end, we just dished out more money,
it's true.
Student loans is one of those areas that I'd rather not cut from. Just because they're just a long, that long-term thing that, man, if you don't pay it, it's just going to triple just from the interest rates, and it's crazy that student loan is a problem, that it is here in America. It's just one thing that affects so many different people, so that's a real life real life thing that a lot of people are navigating right now. Like, man,
yes.
What can I do with this? So I say, if you could refinance it to a lower rate, refinance it to a lower rate.
Good. Okay.
Take advantage of those of the lower rates that's out there right now. I'll say do that before just not doing anything at all.
Yes. No, that's so good.
So look at ways that you can pay the same amount, but with less interest. So you make more payments on the premium and not the interest. So.
That's so good. Yeah. One of the things I've done is my husband and we set up our student loans to be paid on bi-weekly.
Yeah.
So rather than once a month. And what I've found is that it's hitting the principal faster. And so I was like, okay, I read it somewhere. And I was like, I understand all this principal stuff. You know what I mean? But I am understanding that the impact, like I've seen it come down so much faster, even though it was the same amount, right? Yeah. But it was just doing it twice a month instead of just once a month. So I've seen it's just a tip for somebody, and it was just easier for us to manage financially to do it bi-weekly anyway, because of the way we get paid. Yeah. So that's a tip, and if you want to speak into that or what have you, give your expertise.
That's a great thing. There's people that do that with their mortgage. There's people that do that with their auto loans as well. So, paying bi-weekly definitely can save people money by doing that too as well. So that's definitely a good, practical thing that people can do as well. So, like you said, I'm glad that you mentioned because how your guys' pay schedule is set up, that works for you guys. So that's definitely as someone, what they're only getting paid monthly, maybe, the monthly thing it's getting like that. So the tricky thing with finance is the principles is one size fit all, but not the practicality of it. Like different steps. To get to the same result. So that's a very good one. So that's a good thing that you mentioned that one for sure, because that definitely can save a lot of people's money.
Well, so I know because again, this instinct to survive is strong, right? So scarcity mindset says, hey, if it comes down to me eating, student loans got to go away. Another area that I have found, and I wasn't even planning on asking this, it just popped into my mind, but I already know what you're going to say, is what about the folks that are tithing and they're tempted to withhold their giving because of fear or because of, I just lost my job. I'm not going to tithe anymore. I want you to speak into this as the Lord leads you because I believe, right. Like we just talked about human nature. I gotta hold back. And so no one is going to come after me and say, hey, you didn't give your tithes, right? That's between you and God. And so you don't have to worry about a bill collector calling you when it comes to your tithe. And so I just want you to speak into when folks are tempted to withhold their tithe that they've been given because they've lost their job or because scarcity, because of mindset, whatever, I'm trying to cut back on expensive. What would you say to them?
Yeah, so with tithing, that's great because that's a big one regarding finances, for sure. So I'll say, like you mentioned, it's definitely between them and God, and I think God will put I won't say pressure, but he will call them out from a spiritual standpoint on, whether or not, well, conviction, that's the word I'm looking for, conviction, whether or not what they're doing is glorifying him or is it glorifying themselves or is it glorifying fear? And I think that there's some people that, I don't know what's going on. I'm still working, but I'm not going to tithe because I just don't know. I'll say, I definitely encourage you to keep tithing, but also, like you mentioned, there are some who may have, recently gotten laid off. If you're, been getting paid, $5,000 a month, you've been tithing, 500 of that or 1,000 of that, it's going to be unrealistic to give 1,000 of nothing.
Sure, absolutely.
So I'll say even if you can't tithe, more you're getting, or if you've been getting, unemployment, tithe that, tithe from that. If you can't, maybe if you can't tithe, finances, tithe your time, try to volunteer. There's different ministries that people, can serve in church, not necessarily at church, but there's a lot of, organizations people can serve at, things like that too as well. So, so you just don't want to be so fearful of the situation now where you lose track of having that faith in God, where you're not necessarily holding it in, where you still, going to give it out, give to God, what it is and things, how I look at finances. Some look at, okay, you're tithing, you giving to God 10% and you keeping the other 90. Honestly, the whole 100 is God's.
That's right. That's right.
He's just using, he just wants the 10% just to give, to serve, serve people as well. But it's also, although we tithe 10%, whether that percent may be for people, we still are called to steward that other 90.
That's right.
So I think if you look at, your finances as a whole, not as something that is yours, but something that is God's, that God has entrusted you with, I think that shift in that of not tithing will decrease, for sure. But you have to look at no, this is not my money. This is God's money. But the moment we look at, okay, this is mine, I earned this, we just want to keep it.
Yeah.
That is human nature. So I'll say, even just look at your finances as a whole, not just your money, your finance, not just your life entirely as something that is God's. Like, I have to steward my finances. I have to steward my life. What does God want me to do with it? So it's really coming to a place and really spending time with God and posturing yourself at the feet of Jesus. Really have that conversation with God. Like, hey, God, what do you want?
Yes.
What do you need from me? In a time like this as well. Like I said, even Jesus served in a crisis. So for some people, serving may be financially. I know there's several people that I'm gonna give even more during the season. I'm gonna go above and beyond the tithe. I know there's people out there that need it.
Yes.
So just really just looking at your finances, like, it's not mine. It belongs to God. Not just 10% of it, all of it. Like, I'm called to steward all of it. That 10%, again, going back to the church, that's part of that stewardship.
Yes.
So it just really, really having that mindset of, okay, this isn't mine, it's God's.
That's
so
right.
Also, if you been recently laid off, maybe you can't tithe or you can't give as much as you can, but also continue stewarding your life. So when those dollars start to come back in,
come on,
your heart, the posture of your heart is still with God, and I think God is going to bless that for sure. So.
As you were talking, you said the words right that were in my mind was that this is a matter of your heart at the end of the day, and do I trust in these finances and this money, or am I trusting in God, who is my source?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. At the end of the day. And sometimes I think we can rob God of an opportunity to do a miracle in our lives when we choose to withhold what already belongs to him. And giving in seasons of lack, if you will, or limitation really is a test to us. Like, are you going to still trust me? And I've lived through those seasons and I can tell you, I've been tempted to hold back. And sometimes early on I did, and I'm telling you what, it came out somehow. I mean, something broke down on me or whatever, but when we began,
charged.
Listen, early on, just thinking you could fool with that stuff, and there is definitely consequences spiritually. But when my husband and I finally, we were like, listen, no matter what, we are going to give, and there have been times, sometimes we got behind, we were like, okay, we got to make that up. You know what I mean? Early on, when he had gotten laid off and I was in between jobs and all of that. But at the end of the day, God is so faithful, to us, and he provides. And I think, again, I just want to say, do not rob God of an opportunity to show himself strong in your life, to reveal to you the provider that he is. I can remember, Daniel, just a little story down memory lane. I went away to Bible college. This was in 1994. And I wasn't working at the time. And I was going to Valley Forge Christian College in Phoenixville, Pennsylvania. It was a very rural kind of area. I didn't have a car. We were locked up in some kind of community. Like, you had to have a car to get anywhere, as far as stores and all that. And I wasn't working. And I remember just crying out to God. I was like, man, my family can't really send me anything. God, what am I going to do? Like, I needed basic stuff like toothpaste, deodorant, feminine hygiene type stuff. I'm just going to keep it real. And Daniel, don't you know, I went to my mailbox at the university and there was cash in my mailbox.
Wow.
Another time when I was there in Bible college, I was like, Lord, what am I going to do? I don't have resources. And while I was praying, as God is my witness, an envelope of money came under my door. And I was just like, wow, God, like, you see me. You know what I'm saying? And I could just remember times when something else not too long ago happened to us, crazy. And we got hundreds of dollars from someone just gifted and I just couldn't believe it. I'm like, God, you are faithful. So those of you who are listening, like when you put God first with your life, when your heart is in the right place and he sees your struggle, he sees what you're going through, do not rob him of an opportunity to show up supernaturally in your life. He moves hearts of people.
Yeah.
You know, he does. And to this day in Bible college, I'll never know who did. I didn't tell anyone, Daniel. Do you hear what I'm saying? Like, people are tuned to God and they get moved and they get impressions from the Lord. And we have to let the Lord use whosoever will, whoever's listening to move on our behalf. And so I get so excited about it because I have seen God show up so many times. When we had car issues not too long ago, our car, we needed a new engine, right? And so my husband didn't have a way to get to work. And I was like, okay, God, what are we going to do? We really, want to do a car payment right now. Like, what time? And someone gifted us a car.
Wow.
And if I keep talking about it, I'm just going to get emotional because I'm like, God, you are so faithful. You know what I mean? And when we honor God first, when we seek to please him, and I look back I'm receiving the blessing of years of faithfulness to God, right? Of that commitment to him. And so no listener, as you may be tempted to withhold, I just want to encourage you, like Daniel, do not withhold what belongs to God. He will honor you. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm not saying that there weren't nights where I was like, God, what are we going to do? And God came through. He always did. And it may not have been in the moment or the way or the fashion or form that we may have wanted or liked, right? I'm not saying we got a brand new car. God gave us a car and it's exactly what we need. You know what I mean? I just know that he, not only is he our provider, but he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, right? And so keeping him first, honoring him in our hearts, trusting in him and allowing him, if he told the disciples, hey, listen, I'm sending you out 2 by 2, take no money bag with you. Don't take anything with you. And I believe that was a test to say to them, for them to say, all right, we have to trust God to move through his people, to meet my needs, for my food, for my lodging. That takes a huge amount of faith. And I believe God is in this season, God is wanting us to be that to others, right? To serve it when we have, and also to trust that the Lord hears us and he is going to move on our behalf and provide for us right when we think, just like the widow who had a little bit of oil and flour. It's like, what do you have, right? Be faithful with that and give it to the man of God first as an act of giving to God first, and he will do miraculous things. So, I'm on my soapbox.
We've had similar seasons with that. And while you're talking, the verse that was like going through my mind was Matthew 6:33. It says, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all its righteousness, and everything else will be added unto you. I think, as people are called to seek God first. Allow him to be God and handle the rest. And I think one thing that a lot of people need to realize is that God is a lot better at math than we are.
Come on. Yes.
A lot better at math than we are. We're trying to, 2 equals 2. 2 plus 2 is 4. God, I can multiply 2 times a million.
Come on.
So he's a lot better at math than we are. For sure. So it's really just having that faith in God, because people don't move people. God moves people. I've even been guilty of myself, is trying to be God to people or trying to move people myself.
Wow.
Things like that. Then in those moments where I can't, I doubt God.
Right.
What? I'm called to serve people. I'm called to be available to people. I'm not called to be God to people.
Come on, Daniel.
Allow room for God to be God, for people. And also allow room. And one thing that I've gotten better at over the years, to be vulnerable enough to allow people to serve me as well.
Yes.
Well. So I think that's part of God being God, because God uses people to serve people.
That's right. Man, I'm a living witness, and it's so good. That's for somebody out there. I'm feeling that we are two people who will testify who have been faced with the fire, and God provides. Just like you were talking about multiplying. I love that. Allow God to be God. Allow him to be a miraculous God who multiplies your 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. You know what I'm saying? When you give it to him, say, God, this is what I have. watch him multiply that. And I think that's so good.
Yeah, because if things always went well in our life, we'll feel like we don't need God.
Come on.
That's the reality of it. So I think in a situation, for example, like the season that we're in now, around the world, it's a season where we really have to rely on God. We really have to press into God. And I think that's a good place to be in.
Yes.
As a people, you're like, no, there's no other place that we'd rather be.
That's right. That's right.
And things like that. So it's just really, pressing into God, really taking advantage of this opportunity that we have to slow our minds, to slow our world down, work and really press into God and serve people,
That's right.
serve our neighbors, whoever the case may be, just serve people. But that's what we're all created to do.
That's right.
And serving looks different for different people, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not everybody's called to be a shoulder. Somebody has to be an elbow. Someone has to be a finger. So serving looks different. People have different things. Different giftings and things like that, and that's totally okay.
Absolutely. What a perfect opportunity for the Church of God to rise and be the light, right? To give the reason for the hope we have, that even if I lost my job, even if all of this, I will still bless the Lord, oh my soul, right? He is still good. He is still my provider. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I don't need to fear because the good shepherd is with me. He will cause me to, so just knowing who he is, and it's just an opportunity for us to shine brighter, right? Because people are hopeless. People are discouraged and they're weary. And this is an opportunity for us to rise up and say, hey, let me tell you about the hope that I have. And I don't know how God is going to, I'm in the same boat as you. I don't know. But what I do know, is if God is for me, who can be against me? I do know that he is a provider. I do know that he is an unlimited, all-powerful, God who still does miracles. And this is an opportunity for our world, right? I'm hearing a lot of people starting to cry out to God. And like you said, I was having a conversation with my brother and my husband the other day. We're like, America has a lot of idols. And so we had to shut down the NBA, the NFL. We had to shut down all of this entertainment, all of the eating out and feeding ourselves and gorging on the ego to remember who really we need to be serving. It's not ourselves, and living our lives for. And so that's so good. That's so good.
So good.
Ooh. So
we can go on and on about that one.
I'm telling you. I'm just like, okay, Lord, you are moving.
Yeah.
He's speaking.
Well, friend, that is all I had for part 1 of my conversation with Daniel. Listen, I hope you were encouraged by this conversation today and that you are walking away with some very practical strategies and also some spiritual insight on how you can better lead your finances during this season of economic downturn. Listen, friend, I want to just leave you with a scripture that was on my heart that I want you to walk away with and treasure this. And it's Proverbs chapter 3, verse 5. It starts and it says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your own understanding. Seek his will in all you do, and he will show you the path to take." And then I'm going to skip down to verse 9 where it says, "Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the best part of everything you produce. Then he will fill your barns with grain and your vats will overflow with good wine." Now that is an encouraging word, y'all. When we honor the Lord with our finances and give him the best of everything that we produce, he is going to fill our barns. He is going to fill our cup. He's going to fill our tank with those resources, whether it be energy or whether it be finances, so that we will be overflowing. Trust the Lord today. Stand on his word and his promises. Keep your eyes on him and don't look around at all the chaos and the noise around you. Know that God is with you in this storm. He is with us, and with him, we will not drown. Remember, y'all, be sure to check out part 2 of this episode next Friday. And as always, remember to lead yourself strong. Choose to love God, yourself, and others passionately and on purpose, and make those daily decisions to thrive. Until we talk next week, peace.